You're listening to a Benstown and McVeigh Media Podcast Network production. Run It Again is an inside look at the players, the coaches, and the business of sports with former NFL star and broadcaster Ron Pitts.
And 2 minutes later, I was back in the same Oklahoma drill that I got the concussion from.
And the mastermind behind the greatest show on turf, Coach Mike Martz.
And we want to force him into a vanilla defense and go to work.
Run It Again is a hard-hitting, no BS podcast that connects you directly to the source. This is Run It Again.
All right, Mike. How you doing, man? We're all hooked up, ready to go.
Made it through that lightning storm last night in San Diego. If you can believe that.
It was up here in LA too.
Yeah.
The Raiders must have brought that over.
You're right.
What was that about?
The Bolts, man. The Bolts in the side of the helmet. They got it going on.
You know, all the announcers missed that.
Yeah.
And my man Mike Martz picks it up. That's right. Yep. Yeah. Well, since we're talking about Bolts, let's talk about that Monday night game. A good showcase for quarterbacks. I thought the Chargers jumped out to a nice lead, and then the Raiders woke up in the third quarter, but it was just too little too late. And you always said, even going back to last year, that Herbert kid is something special. And he made some throws again. I like him. The more I see him play, the more I like him.
A guy with that kind of talent as a passer, first of all, he's got terrific skills. But what makes the difference between just a good passer, even if you're really accurate and you can throw the ball really well, there's plenty of those guys in the league. But what makes him so different is what he can see and react to is remarkable. Like the great ones do, and his judgment about things for a guy his age to be able to do those things is really remarkable. And combined with a high level of skill makes him pretty unique.
What was going on in the first half with the Raiders? It looked like they didn't have John Gruden didn't have things figured out, with that offense and opposing defense. And then third quarter, they start bombing away. And I'm going to pound the table on another subject once you answer that question. But what was going on there? Okay,
so they've done their homework on John. And let me just say this about the NFL. In the first 3 weeks, the first game, the second game, you don't really know what's going on with your opponent. You have one or two games. You got that kind of a book. And then from last year a little bit too. But after 3 games, you have a pretty good idea about people, and how to approach the game. And John has always been a meticulous first down guy. So, and he loves these squeeze down sets. He never spreads anybody out much,
sets, right?
So, what they'd done their homework on these squeeze down sets and how they're trying to get the ball deep, and they just took it away. And he kept trying to get the dink and dunk. And I was watching their linebackers and their nickel and whatnot on the snap of the ball. They might have taken 2 or 3 steps back, but that was it. And they came downhill on everything and blew it up. And, he's reluctant to go over the top. He just is. That's just not his thing. In the second half, he let him go over the top. He started pushing the ball down the field. But that's John, and they knew that. But remarkably, they did a great job of shutting down their running game as well.
Yeah. See, that Henry Ruggs kid, boy, I tell people this all the time. There's speed, and then there's ludicrous speed. I'm talking like Willie Gault, Cliff Branch, those type of guys back in the day that you think you've turned and gotten out of your back pedal soon enough, but you're 3 yards too late. And I just couldn't understand. That's come because they hit him early in the third quarter. I want to say the first couple drives, and then they kept hitting him. I'm like, at what point do you back your safeties up? I think these secondaries these days, to a fault, they try to take away everything. Oh, I'm going to stop the dig and I'm going to defend the post go as well. You can't do that. And I never understood it. Just play deep to short in that situation. That almost got him killed.
Yeah, I think what they had thought at that point was that they get to the quarterback before they could do that kind of damage with him. And I think at times they were right. Happens. But the Chargers have got a terrific pass rush. They really do. Better than I thought. I was a little disappointed up front with the Raiders. The Charger offensive line handled them pretty good in that first half. Yeah. But Ron, it's just like anything else. We always said this, that the better coaches in the league, they have a game plan. Things aren't working well. You have to go back in at halftime and just retool everything. And that's a hard thing to do because you have to have enough offense to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And John did that. He went in the halftime.
He did. Yeah.
He did. And he came back out and they started to do different things.
Yeah.
And they did confuse Carr a little bit. And then he got rattled. He's always been a guy that if you hit him early, he gets off the mark, so to speak.
That's what Joey Bosa said this morning.
And then Herbert on the other end, you can hit him all you want. It doesn't make any difference to him.
No.
He just stands in there, makes throws. But Carr's always been that way. He's always, whenever he's gotten banged up early in the game, he gets a hot hand there and starts dealing that ball out there a little faster than he should.
Yeah, Herbert just puts the slide rule back in his pocket, adjusts his glasses, and goes back to work like a mathematician.
Well, I will say this: so the new head, their coaching staffs on both sides of the ball, very, very disciplined, very few penalties. I thought they had a great game plan for him on both sides of the ball. I think, and I'm not familiar with their offensive coordinator at all, but I was really impressed with how they changed things up during the course of the game. The running game really showed its head there, and then of course what they do in the passing game, they take advantage of things as they come up, and they're different. They don't get into a groove in any particular thing where you can shut them down. You don't know what they're going to do at any time, and I love that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like Derek Carr's new haircut. He kind of looked like Tom Jones back in the '60s, but
I didn't see
go back to the cut.
I didn't see his haircut.
Yeah. Anyway, so no, that was a shootout. That was fun. All the fans were there, all the old Raider fans, and the new ones came over from Vegas. So that was fun. Any other games this weekend might jump out at you in particular?
I think Green Bay obviously is on their way back. As Rodgers, that combination, in the passing game between the two of them is, I think, unique in this league. I think it's probably one of the stronger ones that there's ever been. I think between the two of those guys, that's pretty hard to stop. And then everything goes after that, defense and their running game. Of course, they have a good running back and all that sort of thing. But you just can't possibly eliminate them from the picture. You just can't. But I think really the Cowboys, watching them play, I think that's the game that I think has proved that they have changed their mentality. Now it's been several weeks where they've really been balanced and, where he's only thrown for like 250 yards instead of 450. They're both backs, but this time Ezekiel got most of the load, right?
Yeah.
They controlled the clock and they controlled the game. And I think that's the winning formula for them. You're not in and out in 3 minutes. They have those 7-8 minute drives and get a score. I think it's real sound football and they take advantage of their personnel. I think the Cowboys at this point are going to be pretty hard to contend with. And I was disappointed with, the defense with Tampa Bay, but I realized too at the back end, they're beat up pretty good. But I think when you watch that game between Tampa Bay and New England, I think it's really a solid process, which you're bringing Jones, the quarterback, along with, right? So he hasn't made any big mistakes. He's just really solid, high completion rate, and they're just getting him in and getting him a feel for the game, right? And they're doing it the right way with him. And now as he gets more confident, I promise you a year from now, they add some more receivers, maybe another tight end or so that gives him some big strike abilities there, and with a good running back. And shoot, he's going to end up being a really good player there. And who knows how good they could be again a year from now. They'll struggle this year because they're ultimately, offensively, they're probably not quite good enough. But defensively, they've really come on with that defensive front they have. But I think Tampa's going to struggle down through the season with the back end kind of dinged up the way they were. The other thing that they did now, typical Belichick, I watched him in the red zone and they completely baffled Brady when he got down inside there. Right. What they did is they carried him. They played kind of a snub 2-man where the safeties played real low, but they locked up and played 2-man. So and I'm looking at the coverage and I didn't really realize what the coverage was. And then I looked at it again. That's what it is. He's going to give him a look like it's quarters, but essentially at the last second they come down press and they played 2-man. He had no place to go with the ball.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that game was as billed. It was billed as, the old and the new, and everyone got what they wanted. They saw Brady's comeback in the end, and in the end, it was vintage Tom Brady pulling out the win. So
I don't know how
there you
he
go.
does it. At his age, I'm watching him, and his delivery at this point is fast, if not faster than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago. He is so compact and good throwing the ball at this point. I know he's slowed down with his legs and all that sort of thing, but what he can see and respond to, like we were talking about Herbert and these quarterbacks, is really remarkable. Now, he still has that skill. He just can't move like he did. But they still don't have, I don't know what's going on with their receivers in the perimeter. They don't have the selection of guys for him anyway to get the ball to him. They're just not as good at the wide receiver position perhaps as they've been. But
Are you talking about the Bucks or New England?
I'm talking about the Bucks.
The Bucks. Yeah. Evans was there. Godwin made some plays, but yeah, they didn't. You would expect them to play bigger. I thought I'd see more out of Evans, and maybe they gave him special attention, but I don't know that he's played to that level to command that yet.
They threw a lot of balls at him, and at times he really showed up, but there's still a disconnect. They hit him on a seam going down the middle, and Brady, I could see in his face, he threw it to stretch him, and he slowed down and tried to high point it.
I remember that.
And it looked like it was overthrown, and it wasn't overthrown. He just, instead of going and catching it over his head, he tried to stop and high point it, and it looked like the ball was overthrown. So, I mean, some of those things happen that will affect the game because that's a big play too there. So there's still a little bit of a disconnect there with he and the receivers. It didn't look good at times. It did not look good at all. They just weren't on the same page.
The Rams game was interesting. The little man over there, Kyler Murray, is a problem. And it showed me a couple things. It showed me why the Cardinals are the only undefeated team in the NFL, because they seem very well-rounded, under the radar, well-rounded. They've got the quarterback who can move around, and they've got a little bit of a run game with Connor and Edmonds. And bringing Green in there as a receiver to go along with Hopkins, boy, that's a special combination. They present a different kind of problem for defenses now because you've got to treat Kyler Murray as a running back. And now you're stuck with, can you stop the run, but also handle both receivers on the outside? And they took the long kid, the corner for the Rams, to school because that pass rush didn't get there. Right. Couldn't get there. And so they found the weakest link, and he was the weakest link. And I also noticed how they played Jalen Ramsey. They didn't play Jalen Ramsey man-to-man all the time on Hopkins. In the red zone, they did a little bit. I noticed that. But in the field, between the 20s, they had him playing almost like a curl to flat player, like a underneath zone player. And I think that's because they were afraid to have too many guys locked up running man-to-man with their back turned. And now here goes Murray out of the pocket.
Yeah, you can't do that. Not with him. He's proved that. I think he's the most unique quarterback in the league right now. And the difference between he and Lamar Jackson is pretty simple. Lamar Jackson can throw the football, but not consistently well. He's a one and done guy. If his guy's covered, he's not going to go through.
He's a one and done guy. Yeah.
And he can't, he's going to look to run real soon. I mean, that's just who he is. And when he does run, he's very creative, can do some great things, as we know. The difference is Kyler is a real passer. He can see and react. He can get through a read progression, and he's very accurate. He's got a strong arm. I mean, he's the real deal. His only downfall is he's a little bit short, right? But the way you have to play him, he's so quick and he's so explosive. He's a little different than Lamar in that respect because his quickness, he's so sudden. You think you got him, all of a sudden he's out of there, right? So I think with him, you've got to contain him because he is a little bit short. You just can't let him get outside. If he's going to beat you, and then you're going to have to hang somebody in the middle. That's the only way you can play him, in my opinion. Do not let him outside. Don't worry about trying to sack him. Just contain him, and then leave somebody in the middle that can go to him as he starts to move. So And I would play a lot of zone. I just don't
Yeah,
think you
that's
can
what they
line
were
up and
trying to
play
do.
man. And I
Yeah.
think if you play and change up the zones, I'm trying to confuse him a little bit. But if you play man to man on him, you're really asking for trouble unless you're just going to pressure him.
Back in the day, we used to try to play 2-man. And what always scared the bejesus out of our coordinators was if someone got beat inside. And back then we played everything press. Okay. And if someone got beat inside and they caught the ball, they'd run forever because everyone else was locked up across the board with their back turned. Number one. Number two, if you had a running quarterback, the guy could run 20 yards before anyone knew he was running. So that's an issue.
We used to tell the quarterbacks run when you see 2-man. If you have two technique and 3 technique, in other words, both guards are covered.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And offset the back so the linebacker's off to the side. If you don't have in the initial read, you need to get up the field with the ball and go with it. And that just happens. Even with Kurt would do that. Mark Bolger walked in against the Chargers from about 25 out one year, and they never saw him, just like you said. So 2-man is a very scary coverage. It's fine if you're playing, Big Ben now or somebody like that that's not going to move around and beat you with his feet. But that's the last coverage I think you'd want to use against a guy like Kyler Murray.
Yeah. No, I've seen guys get cut in training camp because they let people inside and they threw a check down or the quarterback took off and just ran forever. So,
but Ron, the weakest part of that coverage really is with the running back matching up on a linebacker. And so people didn't do it. They did it once or twice against us with Marshall. Marshall ran it inside. He beat him 1-on-1 and took off inside, and
it's
he
over.
went 50 with it. Yeah, it's all over.
It's over. Right. That's I left that part out. Yeah. Greg Olson, that's the OC over in Las Vegas for the Raiders. They had a couple pictures of him last night, and he's been in the league a long time.
He has been, yeah,
long time.
Very experienced,
So who runs the offense though? And I know
John
the answer
does.
to this, but John runs the offense,
John
right?
runs the offense,
so what is the coordinator's role then?
All right. So when you have a situation like that, generally what happens is just like in New Orleans with Sean Payton. So the staff will game plan, and as a head coach, you're in there for some of the game planning, and you pick up the game plan and learn it really well. But you've got other things you got to get done. Yeah. So he runs all the staff meetings, and they come up with a game plan, and then he'll come in. The head coach John will come in and add some things or take some things out. But the busy work, that's what the coordinator, and he'll organize the staff to get the day-to-day stuff done. Like the cards and the practice plans and, all those things that the head coach just doesn't have time to do.
Yeah. All right. Well,
that's how it works anyway.
Right.
Buffalo. Something that's really come up every year, and I don't know if fans really realize that, is the fourth game of the year is really who you are. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When you look at teams, because like I said before, now you can look at 3 games of these guys from the season, not 1 or 2, but 3 games is really enough to get a pretty good book on everybody. And you'll notice that scoring was down from what it was in the first or second week of the season, actually. There are more lower scoring games other than, Buffalo, which doesn't, they're going pretty good right now. But I think I think defensively too, some of those performances were really good out there this week. They did a great job of them.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned Buffalo, let's talk about Buffalo. They dropped that first game to Pittsburgh, and everybody, now they're pointing fingers and they're belly aching and this and that. But talk about correcting things fast. And they blew the Texans out of the water. So what did they change? What got fixed?
I think that first game was kind of an anomaly.
In the
opening game, you've got all offseason to prepare for that opener. And, they got beat on the block punt is what it amounts to, and scored with it. So I think that's what happened to them. They lost on a special teams play. And then because they've got plenty of yards in that game, he had a pretty decent play. They just didn't score points like they could, and like they are right now. And Ben Roethlisberger didn't play particularly well, but he made some plays to keep the ball away from him when he had to. So I think they play right now. I don't think there's any question that they would beat him soundly.
Yeah. What's going on in Pittsburgh? Is this
Ben
as
can't
much of
play
Ben?
anymore. Yeah, he's
Ben,
done.
that's what it looks like. And I like Ben. I'm
I
going
do
to tell you
too.
that right now. I'm a Ben Roethlisberger fan. He's brought some hardware into the building, if you know what I mean, Super Bowl rings. But it just looks like it's not working anymore.
He's chasing that Tom Brady deal, and it's just not going to work for him. He is. He just doesn't have the skill level. He's missing a lot of throws that normally he just would never miss, and he can't move anymore. He's just not mobile. And he used to, so big and strong. He used to just throw them away and move around and make a throw. He can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Hey, let me go back to something here. That Dallas Carolina game. Now, we knew Carolina didn't have Christian McCaffrey. He pulled that hammy last week, and he's going to be out at least another week on that one. In a big day for Diggs, the corner there for Dallas. He's leading the NFL in interceptions. Got 2 there. I thought Darnold really played very well, and I like watching him play. He seems to make the most out of sometimes what is very little. And knowing they don't have the run game. What does Matt Rule do with that team right now? Do you just look at that loss and say, hey, we did the best we could with what we had. We played them tough to a point, and then it got away from us. Or do you try to reinvent your offense in ways?
Well, you're going to have to change offensively for sure. I mean, you're going to have to do some things now just to get first downs, without the runner. So you're going to have to change your approach to the game for sure. I think the caution here was just don't let Sam go back to the Jets. In other words, you hand him the ball and say, hey, you got to win the game for us. You can't do that to him, and then he'll go backwards. And that's just too hard on it. I don't care who you are, quarterback. That's just too hard. Yeah. So they've got to continue to give him those, I call it the John Gruden offense, where you just kind of in the passing game, nothing's really over 8 yards. You just dink and dunk and move them down and take your shots where you can get it. You can't make mistakes on offense, and don't worry about trying to make a heroic throw or anything like that. Just move the change and stay on the field and hopefully get some sort of points at the end of it. And you have to be very, very patient on offense at this point. You really do. And, they hopefully, I don't know who they have to back Christian up, but hopefully they'll get something on the running game to help them.
Yeah. How good is Dallas?
I think Dallas is a Super Bowl team. They've always had the ability. They've always had the players, Ron, I think. But the key was when Mike came down there and looked and inherited that stuff. Of course, they ended up changing the defensive staff, which ended up being a real good change for him. But the discipline just wasn't there. Remember, we always used to talk about when you watch the Cowboys play, it looked like a bunch of independent contractors who showed up at the stadium and played and then got their paycheck and went home. Mm-hmm. That's not they look like a football team on both sides of the ball. There's some real enthusiasm on defense. You can see them all chasing the ball. They're disciplined in what they do. And the back end now has showed up, which in the past run, they're playing so much man. They must have had more holding calls on third down than any team in the league.
Right.
And offensively, they went back and changed. They became more conservative because they've got 2 really good backs and let them play. You got to let your good players play. You can't get in there and throw for 450 and you look over there and you got 2 really outstanding backs sitting on the bench all day. You can't do that. And they've gone back to taking advantage of what they have, and then they're playing sound football and defense, which they haven't done for a long time. And they're talented. I mean, they're as talented as anybody in the league. I think they are a Super Bowl team. They're certainly capable of it.
Yeah, Hubbard is the man who stepped in for McCaffrey. He had 57 yards rushing, in their attempt to try to sustain some kind of semblance of a run game. And to show you how well that worked, Darnold was a second leading rusher. So,
well, I mean, they'll. I mean, you just do. All of a sudden, these guys, a lot of these guys that are backups or starters just waiting to happen. That's just the way it goes. And you can't abandon them the running game. They'll get it going, but you have to change kind of how you run because with Christian, you can do just about anything you want, right? So now they have to be a little bit more conservative with what they're doing in the running game.
Yeah, DeMarcus Lawrence has been out with injury, and it's funny. Ever since he got paid, it's almost like he disappeared. And I wonder sometimes, was I talking? I can't remember who I was talking to in the league last year about this, but they said, can you tell me a running back that got a big contract? I know Lawrence is a defensive lineman, but can you show me a running back that got a huge contract and then had a great year or years after that? And it's interesting. I really couldn't think of anyone.
I can tell you one, Marshall Falk. He got a big
Marshall?
contract, and he
Okay.
absolutely. And I mean, there's a few of them that have really done that in the past.
Yeah.
In fact, Marshall is, for us, he delayed some of his money, if you will, pushed it back,
restructured for you.
Yeah, restructured for, for cap purposes. So, I mean, there are plenty of those kind of guys. When the guys that show up, they get the big contract and then don't play, they're anomalies. That's not the rule. I mean, they stick out like a sore thumb. And I think they kind of, that's the end of their career from that point on. After the end of that contract, they treat him like he's got poison ivy.
Yeah, that's why teams are careful, though, about laying that big money on a running back. You have to be careful because, well, look at the situation the Rams got into with Gurley. They gave him the big money, and I don't think he played the same as he played before he got the money. And then 2 years after that, they ended up shipping him out, and they're still eating the dead cap money.
Yeah, I think you have to be real careful about the personality. That's why you have to know this guy intimately, what he's made out of. And Ezekiel Elliott got all that big money, and that was kind of said about him, but he wasn't given the opportunities.
No, I feel different about. You're right, Mike.
Yeah.
No, they just haven't been able to fit him into what they're doing.
Well, now they're doing
healthy and all that.
What they should have done a couple of years ago, right? So, and they're getting it right. They really are. I think they're going to get better and better as the season goes. I think they'll end up in the Final Four one way or the other when the season's over with.
That's right. 17 games here, folks, as we discuss the NFL season. Ron Pitts, Mike Martz, Run It Again podcast. Hey, let's give one out to our guy, Andy Reid, shall we? The Chiefs over the Eagles, goes back to where it all began, so to speak, for him as a head coach. And he sets a record, becomes the only coach in NFL history to have 100 wins at two different franchises.
Andy and I became head coaches at about the same time. And our wives got to be good friends when we met down at the owners' meetings and whatnot. So I got to know Andy a little bit. And I will tell you, there's probably not a guy more liked in this league than Andy Reid. He's generally a gentleman, one of the nicest people you ever meet. Everybody pulls for Andy. In fact, I sent him a text when the other week when he had those after the game when they took him to the hospital.
Yeah.
I got an immediate response, and I haven't talked to him or seen him in many, many years. So he just is, he's somebody that you definitely would want to play for. There's no question about it. He's very smart. He has his way of doing things, but he'll change. And his ability to change is what made them so good on offense, and his ability to find good assistants and develop them is pretty remarkable too.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I did the same thing, Mike, because our families are close, and we would always see their family out at the Pro Bowl for all those years because they could never get over that hump. And I think you had something to do that because you guys were going to the Super Bowl. But he just a great family man, great individual, great person, and the type of person that the league definitely should be about.
It's funny you said that. We played them in the NFC Championship game, and we ended up coming back in the fourth quarter and beating them. And after the game, you're not feeling too good. When you lose a game like that, you're not in the best of mood, right? So, but he comes over and he gives me a big hug and he said, "Hey, listen, go win this one for the NFC. You guys have done a great job." I mean,
that's something.
That's Andy though. And he was truly, he meant that. He was as hurting as he was excited for us to go play in this game. And I never forgot that. He's just nothing but class. And he's definitely somebody you'd want your son to play for. There's no question.
Yeah. And that's not an easy thing to do after you lose one, especially a big one, is to go over and tell a guy, "Hey, go win this one for us."
Yeah.
You don't have that feeling in your gut at that point. Yeah.
The unselfishness of that is pretty remarkable. I've been in that position where you lose that game and you just, it's hard to come up with those kind of words, but it's the compassion that he has is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah. Big win for the Chiefs. Like I said, they're going to have to keep pace in that, this new AFC West now that all of a sudden has gotten real hot between the Raiders and the Chargers in control and the Chiefs now and the Broncos. I don't want to say they're not for real, but I knew they needed to be tested. The Broncos did, and it made a difference. The Ravens
I'll say it for you, they're not for real, right? How's that?
Okay, there we go.
I'll take it on.
You just take that one. Take that one for the team, Mike.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's like we started off with the Rams. When we moved the team back to St. Louis, we started off, we were 5-1, and we're feeling pretty good. But when you looked at who we beat and how we won those games, some of them were almost by accident, right? So,
right.
But we got to those 5 wins. So we're, after 6 weeks, you're 5-1, you're feeling pretty good. Then San Francisco came in. We played them at the old ballpark there in St. Louis. And I watched them warm up, and they're very gracious. Hey, you guys are having a great year. As soon as the opposing coaches tell you, hey, how good you are and you're having a great year,
watch out.
It's coming, buddy. It's coming.
Yeah.
They embarrassed us. That was a Ken Norton deal where he went down to the end zone on the goalpost and started beating it up like he's
speed bagging. I remember that. Yeah.
So anyway, I kept that part on tape, and I took it off and put it on a separate reel, and I kept it. So when I went back to St. Louis 2 years later in '99, when we went to the Super Bowl and won it, before that first San Francisco game, I think, which was game 3 of the season, that night before, we showed the guys, because Isaac was trying to tell the guys how much it means to him to beat San Francisco, right? And we showed that tape and the embarrassment and how humiliating that was. And then they just rub your face in it, So Isaac goes out in that game and scores 3 touchdowns in the first quarter. When a guy's that excited about playing somebody, you got to give him the ball any way you can.
I remember that, Mike. I did that game. Yeah. I did the game when you got him back in St. Louis.
St. Louis, yeah.
And you beat up on him. It was probably the biggest offensive explosion in that short period of time that I've ever witnessed in an NFL game. I couldn't believe the amount of points you guys scored in the first 10 minutes of the game. And correct me if I'm wrong, Isaac had caught a bunch of balls early and some touchdowns, and he got emotional on the sideline about it.
He did, yeah.
And it was an interesting moment because at first one of my producers said, "Hey, he's hurt. He's really hurt bad. Look, he's crying." I said, "No, stop. This man isn't hurt. This man those are tears of joy because he's been beat up by this 49er team and embarrassed, and now he's getting his payback." That's what that is.
You're right. So in LA, he went through that and experienced it. Then we experienced it in St. Louis. He experienced it there for 4 years, right?
Yep.
They weren't just losses; they're ugly losses.
That's right. Yeah.
And then to suffer through that, and some of the new guys in the team, they didn't really understand that. So we put that tape together, and that's why he was, he was so emotional about it. He catches 3 touchdowns in the first quarter. And then right before the half, we throw another one to him. He catches a 60-yarder over his head for a touchdown. So he ends up, 4 touchdowns for the day and just having a remarkable night. And this had been coming for many, many years. This was his exorcist of the 49ers, so to speak. And
sure it was.
From that point on, when we played the 49ers, we just made sure that Isaac got the ball.
Yep. And boy, that was something to behold. Isaac Bruce had him right here on our Run It Again podcast. And since we're talking Rams, and Mike, I remember also that was the 49ers coined the moniker "Same Old Rams" during that game.
Yes, they did.
When they beat up was Rich Brooks the coach then?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Yes, that's when
Same
I remember
old Rams. You're right. Yeah.
Dana Stubblefield walked off the field there in St. Louis after that game, and he said to the camera, "Same old Rams." And boy, that I think ignited it from that point forward. That led to
we had
Bruce
that
thing. Yeah.
That was on our little clip too. So what had happened is Dana had actually scored a touchdown. He intercepted a screen pass. In fact, we had 2 screen passes that were picked off and run back for touchdowns. It was embarrassing. Very first play of the game, we're all excited because we're 5-1. and I'm over on the bench talking to the receivers, getting them ready because we kicked off to them. Very first play, they didn't have Steve Young. It was what's the big quarterback from Michigan? What's his name? Oh shoot! Come on, help me out here, Ron. Big tall guy.
Elvis Gerback.
Yes. So Gerback.
Elvis.
I'm got my back to the game. And I'm talking to receivers, and all of a sudden there's the crowd just going nuts. He does a bootleg and throws a deep post for 80 on the first play of the game. I said, oh boy, this is going to be a long afternoon. You know?
Yeah.
They beat us up pretty good.
Yeah. Well, you got your payback. Well, we got to close this out here in a few minutes, Mike. But since we're on Rams, let's stay on Rams. Here's my question about Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford won a lot of games in college. Great college career, came out early. 12 years in Detroit, got beat up. How much of that Detroit clothing is he still shedding right now? I mean, I don't want to say understand. Clearly he understands, but he's going from a franchise that might have played 3 big games all year long. He's already played big games, and we're barely out of the first month of the season. Does some of that have to change for him? Does he got to change his mentality? Hey, I'm expected to win all the time in this place. I think 500 isn't good enough.
I think it's an interesting point. I think the thing that he's going to have to be cautious of and be aware of, he's behind in so many games in Detroit. It's up to him to bring it back. And so he starts to make some throws that he shouldn't try to make. And if you're not careful, you'll fall into that mode in a game like he got into, with the Cardinals. And the only thing I've always was curious about with Stafford that bothered me, and I never really said this, but at inopportune times, he'll miss throws. You go, what? How did you miss that? He just comes up and just a throw he should just make in his sleep. He just misses it.
Exactly.
It doesn't happen very often, but it happens at times where you think, what are you doing here, kid? But he does. He has that misfire every now and then that is problematic, I think. And I thought, well, now that he's with the Rams, that's not going to happen, but it did. It showed up.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, and that's exactly right. Okay, well, we're going to have to keep an eye on that one to see if.
By the way, Ron, if I can interrupt you just a second,
yeah.
The defense just went to sleep with the Rams. Did you see that?
The
number one player in the league, he had 3 tackles. That was it. No rush, no pass deflected, no. How can that happen? This is the best player in the league, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you how it happened. Well, go ahead.
No, I don't know how it happened. Because I watch your defensive line. It's just not him. None of them showed up in that game like they have in the past.
So, Mike, there was a game, and stick with me here now because I'm going to go down the road on this one. There was a game where the UCLA Bruins played the LSU Tigers, and the whole city of Los Angeles came out for it. And the Bruins won the game, and it was so big they actually had confetti on the field. I got pictures of guys doing snow angels on confetti after week 3. Okay, so now fast forward the next week, they play this team from Fresno State 2 weeks later, called the Bulldogs, and they look like they never played football again.
Yeah.
So let's flip this over to the Rams. The Rams play the world champion and the GOAT, Tom Brady, and beat up on him. To be honest with you, they beat up on him. Yeah, it really was never close in any regard. And so guess what? Now here come the Arizona Cardinals. Well, you don't have the buzz anymore. You don't have people chirping. You don't have all of the stars that want tickets to this one. Okay. And so I think some of it's a little let down. And I think some of that's on coaches, some of that's on players. But also, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, they got Kyler Murray. They got a guy who is in the hunt, full speed right now for the NFL MVP. Good start. I know we got a long way to go, but a good start. And they slept on it. And I think for Stafford and a lot of other guys on that team, it was, all right, we beat the guys we had to beat. We're in our new stadium. Things are looking good. They're telling us we're going to go to the Super Bowl. We're the favorite. The Super Bowl's in our own hometown. We're going to do just like they did last year. Man, it's a long, long yellow brick road to the Super Bowl in this business.
That's a good point. But the really good teams don't do that.
Right, good, right.
The really,
good teams.
They
So
don't
we
do
don't
that.
know who's a really good team yet.
So here's
Yeah.
but what's different about them is their defensive coordinator. And
True.
watch them from the very beginning of the season. They're not playing with the same pizzazz that they've played, even against the Bucks defensively. They're not the same, and they're not as creative. They're not as disciplined. They're not putting him in position, the defensive line, to make plays. Remember, they used to move him all over the place.
Yeah.
And they're not doing that with him. They're
Yeah.
not being creative with him and letting him be that wrecking crew, Arnold. So there's just no comparison between what they're doing this year defensively. And this is a reason why the Chargers are so good. That's why we said at the very beginning of the season, probably of all the new coaches, he will make the most dramatic improvement or impact on anybody, right? Of all the teams in the league. So, that's just kind of, I think the biggest difference between all of them is of all the situations, the biggest difference there is the defense. I think the defensive coordinator is not the same as we saw last year, and you hate to hang it on him, but there's no question that there was a big difference there, and that's up to him to make sure that there isn't such a letdown.
Yeah, that was Raheem Morris you're talking about. And that was probably him calling you right then.
That's a phone. That's a phone that's hot. That's hardwired into the house, and they just put it in, and they said, "Do you want it in all the rooms to make sure that it goes off?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Make sure so we know the phone's on."
Oh,
that would go off while we're the podcast. Has there been a podcast yet that we've done where my phone didn't go off or one?
You know what? That's our staple. That's the Run It Again staple.
I think I'm going to have maybe Roy, if it doesn't go off, will call us in the middle of a podcast and I'll leave the phone ring. And
that's Roy Hamilton, our producer, calling, your Emmy-winning producer, calling us to tell us that we're just about out of time. And you're talking about going back to the Rams thing. Brandon Staley, of course, the defensive coordinator at the Rams last few seasons, and Raheem Morris took over this season. So there's always the chance of something different, a new dynamic, different chemistry happening when you have a coordinator change. The pieces may be the same, but we'll see if the result is the same.
But Ron, when you look at Brandon Staley over the Chargers and what they did last night against the Raiders defensively, they absolutely shut him down. That's the same guy that was with the Rams week in and week out that did that. They don't have him there. And Raheem Morris may be a real good coach. He's not Brandon Staley. And he's not as creative, and he doesn't morph into what he has to do every week defensively to win. It's different than doing that and just running a defense. If you get into a mode where you're just running a defense, I don't care how good you're going to get lit up.
Well, they better figure it out in about 3 days because they've got the Seahawks on Thursday night in front of the whole nation.
Yeah, no question.
So that'll be interesting. Okay, Mike, that's it for us. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you who won the Fresno State Hawaii game over the weekend, because I know who won the UCLA Arizona State game.
Ron, that was played overseas. I still haven't got a score on it. I'll check on it.
You haven't? Okay, they're still going. Well, let me know when
they played so bad. They went over and just laid a big egg. You know what happened is I watched a little bit of it on TV, and the defense, they're holding bags.
Really? Yeah. Like
it's practice.
Team,
yeah,
the scout team
the
holding
team.
bags.
Yeah. They look like a scout team. It looked like the Globetrotters were playing what was it? The Washington. What was it? The Colonels or something like that they used to travel with.
Yeah,
like a travel team for the Globetrotters. What they
right.
Look.
That's
right.
my
team. Those are my guys.
But Mike,
the Bulldogs.
Well, of course, Mike. I mean, you're talking to both teams there, before the games and everything.
Well, that's another
you speak
thing.
all the time.
That's another thing. After beating UCLA, I go up there and speak to the team before they play Vegas, who hasn't won a game, and Vegas goes out there and puts about 40 on them. Fortunately, they won 46-40 or whatever it was. But yeah, my talk to them didn't exactly get him going.
Well, you'll get another chance this week. I'm sure they'll call you, and maybe you can talk to the Bruins. I'd be up for that.
Well, the Bruins are doing well.
Oh,
they're really doing well.
I don't know.
They beat a good Stanford team. Now that's a good team.
Yeah.
State, right?
What's that?
Arizona State.
Yeah, lost to Arizona State. Now they got Arizona this weekend, so we'll see, man.
They'll beat Arizona.
Hey, we got to talk about the upcoming games here before we get out of here. I almost missed this. So, well, let's just go to Bills Chiefs. Now, Bills think they've got their mojo back, and the Chiefs think they've got their mojo back. So, what gives on this one?
I'll tell you what gives. The offensive line still is not what it needs to be at the Chiefs for Mahomes. They're still not there, and of course, Tyreek Hill is still, who he is.
Yeah.
In the back end, defensively, they're not very good. They're just not very good. The Chiefs are not very good on defense. They get in front and make people one-sided, have to play catch-up football. They've won a bunch of games like that.
Yeah.
The team that they're about to play isn't the Buffaloes from last year. This is really, really a good team. I think the Buffalo Bills will go out there and put a knot on their head, to be honest with you.
Put a knot on it. That game's in Kansas City, so Buffalo's got to kind of clear their mind of what went on in that AFC Championship game and move forward there. Giants, Cowboys should take care of that one. I'm not gonna. It could be a surprise, but I don't think
they should win that game. Yeah,
right.
Dallas. It's in Dallas.
That's it. Yeah, that's in Dallas. Brownies. Now they got the win. Baker Mayfield wasn't happy. Didn't score a lot of points. He didn't like some of his throws. They're coming out to play the Chargers. This could be an interesting game, but definitely a good showcase of two good defenses and two good quarterbacks.
A good team, if you're a really good team, you have to be able to win those 10-7 games kind of a deal, and I just think the Chargers right now are too good. I really do. I think the quarterback is at a whole different level than just about anybody else in the league, and defensively they're finding their way. I think it's going to be hard. You know how I love the Browns now. I love what I think they're really they do one of the best jobs in the league of coaching. But it'll be a close game, but I do think the Chargers will win it.
Packers at Cincinnati. This has the potential to be an interesting game.
What's happened in Cincinnati, the reason why they've gotten so much better, they're better defensively, obviously, but the offensive line has improved a great deal, but not enough. Just not enough. Packers, I think, will still put a licking on them.
Patriots in Houston.
Yeah, that's a moot point.
That's a moot point, really. I like this one here now. The Dolphins and Bucks. So it's been a long 2 weeks for Tom Brady, but he came away with the hardware like he usually does that I think he wanted the most, which was that game up there in New England. Now they're coming back home and they're going to take on Miami.
Well, I think the thing that's going to be hard for Tampa Bay is their back end's gone. Their first three corners are gone. They're so good up front. They're not going to let anybody run the ball on them. But, my goodness, if they can get anything going in the passing game, what happens then if your back end's going, you just put as much pressure on the quarterback as you can. Just don't let them get the ball out.
Yep. Davis is out in the secondary for the Buccaneers. They pick up Richard Sherman. My hat's off to Richard Sherman for being able to do it this many years in the league and make.
You might get that phone call, Ron.
I might.
You've been working out every morning.
You sure? You're darn right.
And you're drinking those drinks that you drink?
Mike, I'm drinking plenty of tequila along with anything else I can find around here.
I'm in the fitness protection program. I don't work out and I don't eat right or anything like that.
The fitness protection program. Yeah. That's crazy, man. Well, listen, for that rookie minimum or veteran minimum that's out there, I'm going to at least try to give you one or two plays. I know I can get off the hash one time, and then I'll pull up with a hammy and call it a day. And
we'll put your free safety and play real deep. Just let you come
real deep, man. There you go. And I'll take my 1.5 million and be out of here. Last one. Let's go Rams Seahawks up in Seattle. Rams need to rebound, and Seattle's struggling right now.
I think they have a problem on defense. The Rams do. They're just not playing. They're underachieving on defense. I think anything can happen in this game. I think at Seattle, I wouldn't be surprised to see Seattle win this one. I really wouldn't. Yeah.
And they're going to have to show something a little different. I mean, they got the 49ers late, but the 49ers are, I think, just a kind of a mess right now and still picking their way.
As long as, on offense, they don't misfire. I mean, they should win this game, even if the Rams aren't really up to snuff on defense, just don't let them have the deep ball and they should win the game.
Yeah. All right, Mike, that's all for us, man. I got to let you
Fix my phone.
I know you got a golf game waiting on you somewhere or something.
Hey, wait a minute. It's for you, Ryan. It's Joe.
Joe
Mama.
Joe Mama.
Joe Mama.
Oh,
we had
man.
a phone when I was in college that wasn't connected in the middle of the locker room on just a cord that wasn't plugged in. And we come in from practice, and every day after practice,
guys would get
our safety would go over and get it, and he'd call somebody out, and of course he'd say who, just like you did. It's Joe Mama.
Yeah, or these, I won't go any further with that one.
Yeah,
can't do that. Yeah, we'll have to get on another platform before we get into that.
Right.
Yeah. All right, man. Fun as always, Mike.
All right, Ryan.
Talk
See
to
you
you next week, buddy. Take care.